Hey, so how's everybody doing? So you know what I want to do here? I want to do something a little bit different. I want to just show you or talk to you about how, like the process that I go through when I begin a paint session. Like for example, this Zodiac, okay? So here's a couple reference photos I got from Google Images. This one there. This will probably be a decal in the end. So I've already built this boat, obviously, and this is clearly not the orange that I want, right? But I don't care. Okay, so when I paint, right, like like I'm thinking about it the day before or whatever like that, and I get a bunch of paints and colors together, right? There's a pink, sort of a pink and red and orange. And I just grab whatever I grab. Like it's all feel. There's no science to it. At least there isn't for me. I mean, for some people there might be. Like some people will say, well, I'm going to paint this Conrail locomotive, but I need Conrail blue. Okay, right? If that's what floats your boat and that's where you're at, then fine, do it that way. But I don't. I just look for that super light colored blue, and I have 3 or 4 other shades of blue thinned to certain consistencies, and then I just start painting and it just comes out. And then when I decide that it looks good enough, that's it, it's done. Like people will say, well, how do you thin paint? Well, there is no standard for thinning paint. Like you can't teach thinning paint. You just, like, it's all feel, right? Like the paints are all different, the airbrush pressure is different, the model, the style you develop, like you just have to do it. Like if you were to teach, like my wife teaches, right? Like she's an art teacher, and so she has students that sign up for a 2-week course and they've been with her for over 5 years. Some of the students, they never left. They just got into the mode. They just pay the fee, whatever it is. It's reasonable, and they become great painters because they had a coach, sort of a tutor with them all the time. It takes years to learn how to paint, but if you're self-taught and self-driven, you just paint. Like that's how you learn. You just start painting, right? So this is just orange. I use this thin orange right here, but obviously that's not the color that I'm going to settle with. But it's a good place to start. So you can see this paint here. It's quite thin. I use IPA usually to thin it with, but I don't like this color obviously, but it's a good place for me to start and get the feel. Actually, this is more accurate. This color right here is more accurate than all 3 of these, right? But all 3 of these colors are in this color and then some, right? I'll paint the bottom black, not white like this. I don't like the white, and I don't like these white benches, but I do like the black on the orange. Whether it'll be a black line there, probably not, but it'll be more like this. Like this has like raw umber in it, like a wash of raw umber to create this shadow. And whatever this color was has been toned way down with washes, right? Like I'm just pretending this is a model, because that's like when I look at the prototype, I see the model in my mind's eye where I want to get to. And I don't care how long it takes you to get there. I'll just keep painting thin layers, making mistakes, covering them up until I get to this. This is going to look like this when it's done. Okay, pretty much guaranteed, right? Like not perfectly, but it'll be good enough. So this is a good place to start, because I like to start again over and over and over again. Like that, they say you should do that. Like if you're advanced in years as a model maker and a painter, model builder, whatever, you should paint a different subject altogether, whether it's science fiction, fantasy, historical, civilian, military, like just paint something different. Like get away from all the earth tone grays and browns, and then do stuff with primary colors and learn to dilute them. Like a lot of times, like this was a combination of pink with just a lot of white in it, right? Like I think that this, this color here will probably go on later, but I'll give it a skimming over. So let me just give you, in closing, I'll just show you how I begin, because the process takes so long to cover and becomes quite boring and pedantic at times because all the in-between stuff. So I'm just going to dump some red in there. I don't like that orange, actually. It's too bright for my liking, right? Okay, so I'm just going to dump some of that red in there. I mean, usually you get red or orange from adding yellow to red or vice versa, but I want to just mix a little bit. See, this is how I thin my paint. This is how I learned to mix colors, the way I learned 30, 40 years ago, and I still do it. So there's a little bit better of an orange. I'm going to add a little bit more red. Just a bit more red. I want to get that kind of reddish, more reddish kind of orange. Even though it's looking more like, let's move this red out of the way, because usually when I do this I spill paint. I really like that color. It's kind of a peachy kind of fuchsia almost. But if it's sprayed thin over top of this, it's not going to look like this, because this is going to show through this if I want to get that. Like you just got to keep shooting paint, thin paint, and you got to do it. The best way to learn how, like most painters are self-taught, and it's all through trial and error, right? Okay, so I'm going to try some of this, but I don't think it'll make that big of a discernible difference. Like on camera here, I'm not really sure, but we'll see. Okay. That's better. Getting there. Okay, that's getting there. So I'm just going to use this as an example because I'll be able to fix this. So I'm going to shoot that on there. I'll just get rid of that paint all on there. Put that upside down, let it dry. Notice how it's glossy too. I don't really care about gloss either. Like I really don't, because I can always flat coat it in the end. And sometimes when paint, like initial primary colors that you put on, like the primary coats, I mean, not primary colors like red, yellow, blue. The primary color, that the base color, which was orange. Sometimes if they're glossy, when you put washes on them, they seem to flow nicer, but not always. Sometimes you want the base coat to be flat because there's more bite and texture to the surface for the washes to cling to and so on, right? Okay, so here's a kind of a pink sort of fuchsia color. And let's look at the photo and let's see what happens. Is this lighting good enough? Not enough red in this, see? But this is part of the, but see how it's getting close? This is part of the, this is the same process that I go through every time I paint something. There is no science to it. That's why it's called art. So don't beat yourself up. Get a bunch of colors out of the same spectrum, orange, red, pink in this case, if you're doing a color like this. Make sure you have red in your washes. Like if you're going to use a pin wash, don't use black. If you're going to use black, add some brown to it. That's of the warm shade, right? Like red brown would work really good with this, like washes inside the deck area. When this dries, put a thin wash in. And if the wash gets too dark, take your light highlight color and just dust it over with the airbrush again to tone it down. And eventually through this process, you will get there, right? Then you'll say, okay, that looks pretty good, right? And then you can come here and go, okay, I'm going to put a little bit more darker washes on the bottom because it's going to be shadow when it's sitting on the davids, right? Okay. I mean, it's not there, it's all one color, right? But we create this. See how that changes? Shadow goes away. Shadow is introduced. Shadow goes away, shadow is introduced. We paint that in artificially on models because that's what helps create the illusion when we go from the 1:1 scalar color to the 187 scale color, which is completely different, and which is why you can't say this is Zodiac orange or Conrail blue. Everything changes when you shrink it down. You got to go on feel, how you feel about the model, how your skills are developing, and if it pops for you, then it's good. So when I get the basis there, I'll just get out hand brushes and some Vallejo colors, acrylic, and just start touching things up, and I'll get there. And then to finish, what I'll do is I'll just find some older model railroad decals. I'll cut some black decal out, some white little decals if I want a nice clean there, and I'll just add those on, put a decal on, right? Like when if it's glossy, that's awesome. And then I'll flat coat it and she'll be good to go. And if I want to put a finishing wash on just to touch things up, then I can do that too, okay? How's everybody doing? So what I want to do here is just quickly revisit tarps, like how to make tarps. And the reason why is when I chose to model this Zodiac, I never planned to build this whole model. I'll just show you a quick photo here. As you can see right there under that blue tarp, this is the Carrier Princess. Of course, I've modeled this section, which is quite large, by the way, in HO scale. But when I set out to do this, and this is often something that will happen when you learn to scratch build, is you begin to realize as your skills develop and your confidence grows that, I can build more of this, right? And that's basically what I did. But then I thought, well, I really like the blue tarp. I like the, the kind of the red, the white, the blue. And then I thought, well, I don't want to let this go to waste. I want to have this as a feature on the model. So what I decided to do was I thought, well, I'll just have it so that there is a blue tarp here, but it's been pulled off and they're working on it or something, or doing some maintenance on it. So that leads to this tarp here, and I want to show you how easy they are to make. For any subject, any scale, any model, there's tarps are everywhere. And we often overlook them, but they're actually a detail that really adds more story to the model, right? So this is just some kind of a crepe paper. It's not toilet paper because it's kind of stiff, right? Okay, like it does tear. I imagine you could use toilet paper or other types of tissue, or you can even use, what's really good is the old tissue that used to use the dope, for covering over model airplanes and such. And I find that this works excellent. Now, the way I do it is you can apply it to the model. The trick is just to use water, and it doesn't matter whether the model's finished or not, but you can lay it on. Like I'll just show it to you here, how easy it is to do. Okay, so see how I lay this paper on here? I just take a wet brush. This is my worst brush, by the way, and I love it for this kind of thing. And what I do is I just gently use a wet brush and just tamp it down. If you're too aggressive, it tends to tear. But if you tear, you can always start again because it's just cheap tissue. Or you can leave the tear. So notice how it starts, just like I haven't even re-dipped the brush. There's enough water in this bristle to basically lay it down, to work it down with a little bit of weight sort of simulated on it. Okay, so now all you have to do there is just let that dry, okay? Just let it dry till tomorrow, and it'll basically turn back to this color, and it'll retain its shape. It'll be flexible, but stiff. So in order to get from here to this is I just lift this off the next day. It just pops off. There's no glue, so it's not going to stick or it's not going to hurt the model or the paint if the water's clean. And then what I did with this was I just airbrushed this blue. You can rattle can this or whatever, but I laid this tarp the same as this over top of this Zodiac model early on. And notice how it's sort of springy and it's not really down tight. That's okay though, because what I'm going to use next is some of this Liquitex matte medium. I love this for modeling. I get mine from Intercity Trains and Hobbies, the local hobby shop down the road. They finally have these bottles in 2 or 3 sizes, and I love it because I have a choice of size of bottle, and it's a must-have for every modeler to have a bottle of Liquitex Professional Acrylic Medium, okay? And what I do is I basically just take some water and, about 50%, a few drops of matte medium, and I do the same thing with this tarp again after it's been painted, okay? And I just start to soak it down, and it just starts to grab everything. Like you can just grab it with your hand because it's water soluble and it's not sticky really, and you just form it down and you can pinch it there just to simulate like the weight. The trick is with tarps is to make them look like they're heavy, because they are, right? And that's what really gives it that realistic look. And then once the matte medium dries, it dries completely flat and it doesn't alter the color of the actual model component or part, okay? So that's how I do that. And once again, it works with any size, any subject matter. And I just spray them or paint them, or you can rattle can with acrylic paint I like to use. And then if you want, you can actually dry brush some highlights on this. And when that's dry, it stays sort of flexible and completely flat, okay?